conversation. And I can remember my pastor telling me, he's like, I've never felt like a situation was hopeless until I met y'all.
Mm.
He comes home one Sunday and he says, I don't want to be married anymore. He takes off his ring. He sits his ring down on the nightstand, and literally, like, from that moment, he acted like he was not married. 6 months after him, us just being friends, he asked me to marry him.
After 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the crazy thing is, I said yes. And 2 weeks later, we got married. He was an assistant pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I was the second lady. Not the first lady, but the second lady. And we went to this Pentecostal church. Him and the pastor got into an argument during Sunday school one Sunday, and we left the church that day. We ended up moving out of our place because I didn't know anything about deliverance ministry at that time. But one of my friends came over, and I think whatever we delivered her from that day stayed, and then found a new place to be, which was him. And so we left because there were literally like some, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh, sheep's ripped up, voices, hearing people calling your name, throwing out everything that you think is demonic into the street in the middle of the night. Like, we moved to a new place. But you can move to a new place, but if you don't deal with the stuff that's going on, it just goes to a new place with you.
Hey.
Hey.
So, this is my Aunt Starr. I know she looked my age, but this is my auntie. And I met you when I was how? Because you married into our family.
Mm-hmm.
So you were.
Oh gosh, I was 26,
So I was probably like 13,
14, 13. Yeah.
somewhere.
I came early in the year, like March. So, yeah. You hadn't had your birthday yet?
So you're married to my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently found out you had a couple of relationships prior to my uncle.
I did.
You did? Okay. So the first one that I found out about was the one when you were part of an active crime scene.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
can you tell the people can you just expound a little bit?
Okay. So, the young gent, I met him when I was, oh gosh, like 16 years old. We dated all through college, the end of my, graduation, and then college. We dated all that time. And so when I was 17, I went to college my freshman year, and the dorms close. And so when the dorms close, you go and you hang out. So we went over to this little park area, and so we were just sitting in the car hanging out. And he had said he was ready to go, but I was like, oh, we'll leave in a couple minutes. So right around that time, a car pulled up, and when that car pulled up, we were like being young, and so we wanted to listen to what they were saying, because it was the little park situation was one way in, one way out. So they were parked on the other side of the bushes, and so we cracked our window, and we were trying to listen to what they were saying, thinking, okay, they'll probably be leaving soon. So we were listening, and it sounded like they were arguing about something. And so the guy was like, why are you doing me like this? And the other guy's like, because you did me wrong. And then literally you could hear them like scuffling in the car or wherever they were. And the next thing we heard was, oh God. And so at that point, I looked at my little boyfriend, and I was like, I'm ready to go. Ready to go. So we cranked the car up, and we were just waiting on them to leave. But after, oh God, the next thing we heard was a gunshot. And so at that moment, you're 17, you're like, I want my mom. Like, you're freaking out. You're like, oh my gosh, I want my mom. I want to go home. Like, who wants to go back to the dorm? I want to go to my mom's house. And so we were just kind of sitting, and he comes around the bushes. And it's dark. There's no street lights. There's no nothing. And we weren't doing anything. Let me just state that. Like, I wasn't, doing anything with them. But we were just hanging out, just sitting in the car by the moonlight, and you see the silhouette of this guy coming around the bushes. And he's pulling on my door. And at that moment, I think I might have learned how to pray. I was like, oh God, he's coming to kill us. And so
So that was your first thought, is he's now coming to kill us.
Yeah, I didn't know what the situation was with the guy on the other side of the bushes, but I knew there were two, and now it seemed to be one. And so he's like, I need some help. I need some help. And I'm like, and my boyfriend's like, get away from the car, get away. There's a lot of yelling. And so again, one way in, one way out. And so he's standing on my side of the car and he's pulling on my door at this point. And so there's no road in front of us. And I just look at my boyfriend and I say, drive. And so he starts driving, at which point the guy starts unloading his gun into our car. And so we drive and drive and drive, and we come out on the highway, and we run every red light we could see, hoping that the police would stop us. We literally get to the police station, and that is when the police, they're like, what's going on? What are y'all doing? And, we're like, a guy just tried to, kill us. He was shooting at us and he shot somebody and blah, 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 And, you got kids in the car and he's like, where were y'all? And we told him where we were. And he literally said, oh, yeah. He said, that guy's dead. He said he shot him right here. And it came out of his head. Why he decided to tell this to some kids, I don't know. So fast forward, we, eventually we go back to the dorm. They made us sit outside in our shot up car for hours, which was scary because
the guy knew what the car looked like.
Baby, I don't know. It's so dark. I don't know. But at that point, you're just like, he knows what it looks like. But at the same time, it was like, your life flashes before your eyes. You're crying. I remember once we finally got to the highway, I looked back to try to see, if the guy's following us. His back windshield of the car was, it wasn't broken all the way. It was just, like that crackling. And so I touched it. I know I was in shock because I was just like, your glass is broken. And when I touched it, it caved in on us. But fast forward, we ended up, I went back to my dorm, and at that point, my mom came, and we were watching the sunrise, and it was all kind of stuff in the papers that we had died. Just so much crazy stuff. And so, we were looking at the car, because now the sun is up, and his mom is there, my mom's there, and there were bullets all up and down the back of my seat. And one of them was this far from the top. So but you can never say what could have happened, what should have happened, what would have happened. But his car broke down the week before. So we were actually in his sister's car. And so there was no metal in the back of his seats, but it was in his sister's. So, I believe I'm here for a reason, for sure. For sure. So, yeah.
So with,
yeah.
my heart. Okay.
Yeah.
I got a little teary-eyed. Okay. That is obviously a near-death experience.
Very near.
What were some of your emotions following that?
Well, so initially, again, you're a kid, and your imagination just runs wild. So I know there were a couple times when the thought was, you know, well, he didn't get caught. He didn't.
So they didn't catch him.
They didn't catch him. They did not catch him. Um, he left the scene. But it was crazy because, again, you don't know what people are thinking or, who it was because I just saw a silhouette. I didn't see a face. So the crazy thing about it is like at nighttime, I wouldn't go out like at night at all for a very, very long time. Being in a place where you're walking and you think somebody's behind you. I dealt with a lot of that because you have night classes, and so you go to class and you're like not wanting to walk back to your dorm if you don't have a car, and then thinking that literally like just not knowing where that person is in the world, and that if they tried to take your life, that they might literally want to still do that.
Because, okay, so you said it was posted in the papers that y'all had passed away, like all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all's names are in the paper.
Mm-hmm. And I was a minor. So my boyfriend was not. My boyfriend at the time was not. But yeah. So there was some crazy stuff going on for sure.
So they put y'all's names in the paper. Mm-hmm. He knows that y'all didn't pass away because y'all got away. So now he knows your name. So if he wanted to, like, look you up, research you, find you, he could.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the other thing, like, from what I'm told, of course, you're still a kid. You don't know. He turned himself in because he was driving, the gentleman that did pass away, he was driving his wife's car. And there was some other stuff that maybe he turned himself in on or whatever. But again, my mom shielded me from so much that there was just no, there was just no way to know what was going on. Because again, you're a mother, you want to protect your child from everything. So she didn't want any of that involvement. But when subpoenas get involved,
yeah,
the courts and the laws are the laws.
So that's PTSD for sure. At what point do you think you started to kind of heal from that? Like, and what were some of the things that you think helped you to heal?
Well, I don't honestly. It's hard to answer that question because when I saw him, again, subpoenas, when I saw him in the courtroom, I looked over at him, and the only thing I thought, again, you grow up in church, but you don't really. There was not that real connection for me per se. I was dropped off at church until I, went to church with my grandmother. But literally, it was like a moment where, when I saw him, I just said, "Forgive him," because he knows not what he's done. And still a kid, but that's just the thought I had when I saw him.
Were you still afraid?
Triggers, I think, certain things, because you felt safe, and then it just wasn't a safe place. It was really kind of one of those wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. You can do everything right, but still there's a wrong place at the wrong time that you're it's just your turn. So there was a while when I was still just scared. I know that there was one day, actually a couple of years ago, not even that long ago, where we were riding in the car, and something about, we were on this back road, and the way the moonlight was shining, I looked at my husband, I said, "I want to go home."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's just this feeling, this uneasy feeling. It was the moon was bright, and the way the sun was shining. And I think there was like a situation where there were a bunch of people that just made me feel uncomfortable. It looked like some kind of rally that wasn't where I should be, and so it just made me really uncomfortable. Like we didn't know any of the people. We were just riding, but that situation made me be like, okay, I don't want to be out here anymore. So that was 20 years ago, but still, you know, not even quite 20, but yeah, a long time ago. And mhm,
So while you were up there on the stand,
mhm.
did you tell him like, "Oh, I forgive you," or
Well, at that point, I think that again, being a kid, they think that people intimidate you. So they actually rolled some kind of partition to where I couldn't see him.
mm,
So I just, there wasn't a that, that kind of thought. There was a point when his family, the man that passed away, his family was crying, and I remember asking my mom. I was like, why were they crying? Because it had been a long time, and grief is grief though. But I just was like, why do you think they were crying? And she was like, you were reliving his last words.
mm.
I'm like, wow.
And they
Yeah.
didn't get to experience that. They didn't get to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it was quite the experience.
Now, did you ever go to like counseling to deal with any of that, or you just eventually you just were able to start going out again at night and
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually, it's funny because, like, you I'm a date person, but for whatever reason I wasn't paying attention to dates. I think it was like a full year later, like literally 1 year exactly. And me and that same boyfriend, we went to a different park. We were just sitting outside. I don't know if we were just like, let's see if we're scared, but we were outside. And while we were out there, a police officer rolled up to us. And I don't know if he ran the license plate and, figured out who we were, but he was like, tonight is the anniversary of, that guy getting killed and da 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 da. And I'm like, of all the nights,
yeah.
and then this is the one thing that you remind us of at this point. But yeah, like eventually.
Well, I think it's and what a lot of people may not realize, like your body remembers trauma, like
Mhm.
your muscle memory
Mhm.
holds on to trauma,
Mhm.
and it's the reason why like you'll spasm like on a certain
Mhm.
day at a certain time, like you may not even be thinking about it, but on the anniversary of
Mhm.
whatever a traumatic event was, like you'll feel sad and not even know why you feel sad, you know what I'm
Right.
saying, like,
Right.
or you'll feel afraid
Mhm.
not knowing, oh, this is the exact day 3 years later,
Right. Right.
until you process that trauma out
Mhm.
of your muscle memory.
Right.
So, you still remember the day now? Do you notice it still every year when it comes up, or do you think you've kind of processed through some of that like date trauma specifically?
I think that I have kind of processed it, just because, actually now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the date. But I'm a person who's like, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, and I really, really like lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm good on that now, like I don't need any more lemonade. But I'm just a person who's like, this is the hand that you've been dealt, play it as well as you can.
Yeah.
So I did talk to, a couple of people. My mom was like, you definitely need to go to therapy, you need to go to counseling. I just had a lot of really good mentors and people that I was able to process through a lot of stuff with. I never actually went to a physical setting of, therapy.
That's good. I had to go to therapy.
Yeah.
It was just me personally. I had to go to therapy. I remember, and this is just my personal situation, where the relationship that I was in right before my husband, um, the guy lived off of like a specific exit number, like, and I would know, like, when I would drive, like, oh, that's such and such's exit. And because I had to pass it going back and forth to college, like every weekend.
Right.
And so when I broke up with him, I broke up with him because I felt like it was the best thing for me at that time, but it didn't mean that it didn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember having just broken up with him, and we went to see my grandpa in Illinois, and I think my youngest brother was like still a baby,
Mm-hmm.
and he's sleeping in the bed with me at my grandpa's house, and I am bawling, like crying my eyeballs out. But I remember I would still have to drive past that exit all the time. And I was on the phone with somebody one day, and this was months later.
Mm-hmm.
And when I passed the exit, instead of saying, "Oh, this is such and such's exit," like they just happened to ask, like, "Oh, where you at right now?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm passing exit, blah, 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 blah."
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I literally broke down crying. And they're like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, because I no longer associate that thing with that person. Like, it felt so freeing in that moment for me, because I was like, now I know that I'm on this healing journey. Now I know that I'm starting to process a lot of this stuff out of my system, because I'm able to form new memories around those things. I remember somebody telling me, like, don't give up all the joy that you have around certain things. As I was going to counseling, like if you like to go eat ice cream with that person, go eat ice cream by yourself. Like, make new memories, or go with your friends, make new memories. If you go on a date, go there, make new memories, so that you have something else to pull from.
Right.
So
Right.
it's no longer
That's so
a
good.
trigger
Yeah.
for you. And so, yeah, I remember bawling, crying. Okay,
Right.
that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. So you continue on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't stay with this boyfriend.
Obviously.
Don't know if the shooting had that near death experience had anything to do with it or not.
No.
But you proceed
Mm-hmm.
to your next relationship,
Next. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which wasn't a long one.
No.
But give us a brief synopsis.
A brief synopsis.
Yes.
Whew. Okay. So that previous relationship was from probably 16 to 21. I think we broke up the year I graduated college. And so, um, you know, I got saved when I was 21.
Okay.
And so that was the pinnacle of the end of that previous relationship. And so then a couple years later, I met a guy at my job, and he was the mailman.
Okay, mailman.
So he came in, and he had been coming in for years into my office, bring the mail, you know, didn't really speak, didn't really talk, just in and out. And so this particular day, he looked at me, and I went to get the mail from him, and he said, "Are you saved?" At which point I kind of laughed, because I am, 2 years, but I'm like, yeah. And so it kind of struck up a conversation, and I was actually getting ready to transfer to another office for a promotion. And, you know, I told him, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I've graduated at this point with my master's. I have my bachelor's. And so I know I'm in my career 2 years, and I know what I'm going to do with my life. And so I'm kind of just sharing with him, because we're just friends. And he's like, "Oh, my newfound friend, I don't want you to go anywhere." And I think literally about 6 months later, after him finally speaking, he had been coming in and out of the office for 2 years, but 6 months after him, us just being friends, he asked me to marry him.
After 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the crazy thing is, I said yes. And 2 weeks later, we got married. We got married. Um, he was an assistant pastor, and so I guess I was the second lady, not the first lady, but the second lady. And we went to this Pentecostal church. I mean, skirts swinging down to the floor, sweeping the floor. I mean, I love that church though. I mean, super powerful ministry. So fast forward, I'm now, I left my church to come to his church that I was heavily involved in at that time. I think I was the choir director, had been for several years, and I get to his church and they now want me to direct the choir over there and do all these different things, and so everything's going great. But he had a health condition. It wasn't like a serious health condition, but it was like a pinched nerve in his neck. And at times it would cause him like excruciating pain. And then I think it would kind of work its way down to his back. And so there would be points where he just wasn't even able to walk. He would literally be crawling on the floor. So I'm trying to give you the brief synopsis. It's a lot involved in that, but basically, he he called me one day. Well, let me back up. Actually, him and the pastor got into an argument during Sunday school one Sunday, and we left the church that day and left. I think we may have visited maybe two churches, and so then found our new church home um, very quickly after that, and it was a good fit. Beautiful. I mean, literally, the pastors right now, like them today. So basically, he called me one day, and I was taking my mom to the airport, and he said, "Come home now," and I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's like, um, uh, I, I, I feel like I might hurt myself. And I'm like, what? What's happening? And he's like, I don't want to be here by myself. I feel like I might hurt myself and da 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 da. And I'm like, what? So I go home and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with him. And he was basically, it was really kind of like a spiritual attack. He said that um, the enemy was speaking to him and had told him that he would never be healed. And his father, who was a bishop, he had died of cancer. And so there was trauma there because you have this, super powerful man of God who dies of cancer, like horrible cancer. Like there was a lawsuit involved and everything. And so it was a terrible death. And basically, he was, I think, angry with God because he didn't heal his father. And now the enemy's telling him, you're not going to be healed. So fast forward past that, he starts taking medication. He goes to see a nurse because, I call his mom and I'm like, hey, something's going on with him. Like he's acting very out of character. There's some things that are strange. And so then he hurts his back and, I take him to his mom's house. And this point, I'm driving back and forth to work like an hour every day because he can't be alone. He's afraid. And so they're like, we got to stop taking this medicine. Something's going on. He's acting strange. And yeah, like I'm driving back and forth and we get him off the medicine, get him some new medicine, and everything's fine. We ended up moving out of our place because I didn't know anything about deliverance ministry at that time. But one of my friends came over, and I think whatever we delivered her from that day stayed and then found a new place to be, which was him. And so we left because there were literally like some, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh, sheep's ripped up, voices, hearing people calling your name, throwing out everything that you think is demonic into the street in the middle of the night. Like we moved to a new place. But you can move to a new place, but if you don't deal with the stuff that's going on, it just goes to a new place with you.
Right. So you said the sheets was ripped up. Just, it was y'all was doing deliverance ministry with no experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so just she was ripped up, and y'all moved, and it didn't stop.
Mm. Well, we didn't have any more ripped up sheets,
Okay.
but the torment that he was experiencing did not stop. Um, like I said, I know that there was a point when he called me from work and he's like, "You got to come get me." So I went and I got him, and he would be like in these crying places of like, um, you know, he would be like, basically, I'm not going to be healed. So let me actually say this. This is random in the middle of it, but I was actually his third wife.
Oh, and y'all got married after 6 months and 2 weeks. Okay, go ahead.
Young,
Sorry. Yeah.
young, young, young. And I didn't meet his mother before we got married.
How old is he to be married 3 times?
He was not that old. We celebrated his 30th birthday while we were together. I planned a 30th surprise party for him.
But she was like 23.
I was
Okay.
24.
24. Okay.
Yeah, 24. I was young.
Ugh,
So,
okay. Sorry.
he was like 28, 29, somewhere in there, but yeah. So, but anyway, I was saying that I just thought about it because he seemed so innocent. So just, he's a pastor, assistant pastor, and he's very caring. He actually had two daughters. They were twins, and so beautiful girls. His girls were so sweet to me. I mean, they just loved me. We didn't have any drama between, his previous wife or anything like that. But we're just in this situation now where literally he's having these health issues and what seemed like anxiety attacks. So I'm driving back and forth because he's staying with his mom because he can't be by himself. And, we run out of the medication when we moved back. And so he it wasn't a midlife crisis because I think he was too young for that. Like I said, he was 30, but he like literally left one day and was gone all day long, and he came home with a motorcycle.
That sounds
And
about right.
he's like, "I got us a motorcycle." And
Who is us?
I'm like, "No, you didn't." First of all, no, you didn't. But second of all, if it was for us, you would at least have two helmets. You got one.
Mm.
So you got one. But yeah, like it's a lot. It's layers to that whole story of it. But fast forward and literally, he's acting all strange. We're at this new church. I'm faithful to the church. He's there every Sunday with a suit on. The kids are with us. Every Sunday we're a happy family. But literally, he is. There are times he either doesn't come home at night or he comes home so late, like, I'm trying to uh, sneak and go in his phone, and he like created a passcode. This was like back when we had what, razors, Motorola razors, flip phones, and I'm like trying to see what's going on in his phone. He's got all these random messages, but I never had any actual proof that there was infidelity, but he moved as though he was a man that was, yeah, like having more than one person. But we were only married a year and a half. We were only married a year and a half, and I can remember literally like we had gone to church. Well, actually, we went to counseling because my then pastors, they were like, I was like, if we're gonna be together, we're gonna go to counseling, and I think he had um, decided that he wanted to be in a backslidden state and no longer an assistant pastor of anything because we left the previous church. And like literally, we were in counseling, and I can remember him telling them that I'm doing the things that I'm doing, regardless of the fact that I'm supposed to be saved, because this is what I want to do. And years down the road, we had a conversation, and I can remember my pastor telling me, he's like, I've never felt like a situation was hopeless until I met y'all.
Mm.
He said, literally, I've never felt like a situation is hopeless. He said, I'd never seen anything like it. He's like, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm not going to change. I'm not this and I'm not that. But he didn't act like that until he got on this medicine. And so, who knows? People can only wear their church mask for so long because he was always the more saved person in the relationship, in the previous marriages. And now you get with someone who's really, truly saved, loves God. I'm not here to, fake and put on a show. And literally, he like backslid.
Yeah.
And I can remember calling him one day. He was out with his best friend. It was a girl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a girl. She acted like she didn't like me, but anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember him being out and me calling him and telling him, at this point, it's so crazy because I wasn't even necessarily worried about us, but I was just like, you should be, you know, trying to do what's right according to God, according to the word. You have these girls and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you might run off the road and tomorrow's not promised. He's like, don't say that. And so then he ran off the road that very night. And then he went off on me
Because you,
because I spoke it.
the reality is, you a prophet. You just didn't know it at the time. Okay.
Didn't know what was going on. But fast forward again, and we had gone to church one Sunday. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's going on other than him just being weird. And he comes home one Sunday, and he says, I don't want to be married anymore. He takes off his ring. He sits his ring down on the nightstand, and literally, like, from that moment, he acted like he was not married. Like, literally, but I remember praying a prayer because we were going to buy a house together. We were in the process of buying a house. We had done the application. I'm in my career. Like, I'm not an underwriter at the time. I'm an originator. But I'm like, I don't want to intermingle my credit with him because I can remember crying because I knew things weren't right. Again, I had no proof of infidelity, but he just moved like someone who was operating in that. And so I can literally remember praying and being like, God, if this is not what you have for me, like if this is not what you have for me, then I do not want to buy a house with him. And so I literally remember I had a dream. And in the dream, we had gotten a divorce. This was before he came and said he wanted a divorce. Mm-hmm. Like me praying the prayer and having the dream of us being, divorced and all that. I can remember like having that dream and waking up out of the dream being like, whew, I'm so glad that was a dream and I don't have to be out here in these dating streets again. And then literally 2 weeks later, he says, I don't want to be married. Sits the ring down. And I don't even know if he went to church anymore after that. So he's pretty much in a backslidden state. I can remember growing up in church thinking the only reason you can get a divorce was if there was infidelity. But then I think in that 2-year period when I got saved before I met him, I can remember learning that the scripture says that if the unmarried ask for the divorce.
If the unbeliever, yeah.
Yeah, the unbeliever asks for the divorce, then God grants you liberty at that point. As long as they desire to stay with you, you stay with them. But if at that point they ask you for it, God grants you liberty to be free. Otherwise, you're committing adultery and you're bound in that marriage, etc. So literally, he was in a backslidden state. And when we were in counseling, he literally told our pastor, he's like, I'm in a backslidden state. Like, I'm doing what I want to do.
So do you think that was the Lord, like, his kindness? If that was not what he had for you, he allowed him to become an unbeliever, like to backslide, and then to choose not to be with you just to free you.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely say that because it was crazy. I remember, like, at some juncture, I was like, this isn't even about me. I was like, you need to get yourself together.
Yeah.
You have these kids. You need to get yourself together. And I can remember actually talking to his ex-wife. We had never talked before that. because she was trying to figure out what was going on because he was like, I can't get the kids. Because I would have the kids, and, he's like, I can't get them. And she's like, well, why can't they be with Starr? And he's like, well, we're not going to be together anymore. And she's like, what is going on? So I think she called me, I called her, and there were very similar stories.
Oh,
Very,
so he
very,
would cray.
very, very similar stories. Like I told you, I didn't meet his mom before. There was just so many layers. His mom told me. His mom told me if I would have met you before y'all got married, I would have told you to run. I'm like, this is your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was some cray cray in there, but again, you're young, you can't see everything. Literally, no, my mom was the only person who was like, you don't need to marry him. But my mom is like, nobody's good enough for my daughter.
Correct.
So there
But
was
if
no
your mama say,
yeah. and yeah, nobody actually said anything. There was actually one lady. She's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "I think it's from the Lord." We be lying on God, like
Yeah.
for real. But nobody actually said like, "We have pause on this." Nobody said it. After the fact, like 55 people were like, "We had pause on this." And I'm like, well, if 55 of y'all would have said something, I might have been like, maybe I shouldn't do this. But literally, there was one and a half if you count my mom and the guy. So that was, you know,
So I have a question because I heard you
so
say,
much.
I heard you say, and I feel this, right? There's so many women out there that are in the same position who say, she's crazy now. Okay. I think it was like a song or something like back in the day, or it's just some kind of saying. I'd rather have a piece of a man than no man at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what you just said. Like, you had this dream that y'all were going to be divorced, and you woke up relieved that it was a dream because you ain't want to have to date again.
Well, so at that point, again, you got to remember, I had no evidence of infidelity. I had no evidence of
No,
that.
you had evidence of cray cray.
I did, but that's scripture doesn't say you can leave for that.
That man was crazy. You can be relieved in your dream life. They're like, oh, I got a little bit of relief when I went to sleep. You said you didn't want to have to date again. So you was
there were
relieved it
good
was a
times
dream.
and bad times. It wasn't all like always bad. It wasn't always bad, but it was a lot of crazy.
The bad outweighed the
towards
good.
the end, because like if we were married for a year and a half, about a year of it was okay, like maybe 11 months.
Okay.
So then
It went downhill fast.
very, yes, very. He had bought me a new ring. And when he bought the ring, that was his biggest concern on after he told me he wanted a divorce, was to try to get that ring because we stayed in the house together after that. And his own cousin was like, look, y'all cannot be playing house. Like, if he's saying this is what he wants to do, don't let him keep coming in here, taking you on this roller coaster. Like, if you're done, you're done. It was his own cousin, and so he had bought that ring, and I guess he's still making payments on it. And so he kept trying to get me to give it to him. I'm like, no, it's my ring. I was like, it's my ring. And so I was taking a shower one day, and like literally, he sneaks in the bathroom, and he's like, got it now. And so I was like, huh, okay. I was like literally, he was crazy. I will say that. Because I can remember when him telling me he wanted a divorce. Like, after, I guess there were so many tears during that juncture of like me trying to work through this and me praying and me fasting. But when he said he didn't want to be there anymore, there were no more tears. And he literally said to me, he said, you took that better than I thought you would. I'm like, oh, really?
He wanted to crush you.
So you thought that I was literally like going to just fall apart because you don't want to be with me. I'm like, I was whole when you met me, and now that you're leaving, I'm going to still be whole. Like, I'm not a half of a person. Like, you don't complete me. Like, you're a nice half, but you don't complete me.
No.
So I'm whole with or without you. Like, I love God with or without you. This is not the end of the world. there will be love again. There will be, there was tomorrow. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Did it
Okay.
hurt? Yeah,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. So I actually ended up, I think he ended up getting the house, and by himself. And so there was a period where, he moved out shortly after, and I ended up having to be detailed for work. Like how I was traveling recently, I was traveling a lot for work. And so there was a position that came up in Gulfport, and I was like, I'm going to apply, and so it was a position like I had never seen before. It was an opportunity. I had been working, I think, 6 years at that time. I'd never seen anything come up like that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to apply. And I can remember still trying to honor him and all that crazy. And I'm like, hey, I just got this offer for this job. We were like maybe 3, 4 weeks away from the divorce. Because, I think it was like a 90-day process, 60 days, something like that. And so they were like, I'm like, I got this job offer. And I'm like, no, actually, we were 2 weeks away from divorce. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because when I'm gone, this is it. And he's like, yeah, you're a good girl. You deserve it. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. Okay. So, yeah, I was like, when do y'all want me to start? They were like, 2 weeks. I'm like, oh my
Perfect.
gosh. Oh my gosh. So I went and I looked for my apartment. I found my apartment. When I got back, the guy who was my mechanic, well, it was his mechanic. I took my car to him and I'm like, can you do this tune up? I'm about to travel, I'm gonna have to drive. Gotta make sure my car's in tip top shape. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, so good to see you. He's like, yeah, he was here recently. Somebody slashed his tires on his motorcycle and his car. And I'm like, still no proof of infidelity. But it wasn't me. So there was somebody who was heavily involved and kind of crazy too, who slashed his tires while I was coming to Gulfport to find my new place for my new job.
I ain't gonna hold you. Listen.
Layers.
Listen. I'm just trying to figure out first, before I say anything else, why don't we see the crazy when we in the situation, like when we deep off in that mode? I had an ex. We did not sleep together, okay? But post relationship being over, there was a thought like that man was crazy, because I remember him saying like, I thought about getting you pregnant on purpose so you'd have to stay. And he told me that while we're dating. And that's something like you kind of like, ha ha ha, like you're so funny. Like you kind of laugh it off like, oh, it's a joke. But hindsight is 2020 and you're like, oh no, you're a little psycho.
I don't even want to say I didn't see it. I want to say I was married and I felt like I was locked in. Because again, we're supposed to be saved.
Yeah.
And he literally, like, once the medication came, all the spiritual warfare stuff came, literally like backslid. And again, I'm giving you the condensed version.
Yeah.
Like, because there's so much that happened in that year and a half.
Listen,
So much.
what I really feel like happened is I really feel like somebody did like some root work on him or something. Like it was probably somebody he was messing with that did a little witchcraft on him. So knowing what you know now about deliverance, do you think that that's like possibly what happened? Like why he was tormented so? Like why he had so much stuff going on?
I know he had a calling on his life without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. And what I do know is much like you see throughout the Bible is that the enemy is very cunning and very crafty. And he will use whatever little crack or crevice he can find to work his way in. He used, I have a pinched nerve and I'm never going to be healed, to create enough fear and enough doubt and enough worry and mistrust or distrust in God that now there's got to be something else. You know, so when you have a calling on your life and you don't answer to that call, God is going to do what God's going to do. Because even after we were no longer together, there were certain things that I would just tell him, hey, you know, again, this isn't even about us at this point. You need to get it together. So, like, recently, a couple years ago, he created like a fake profile and friended my sister, sent my sister a friend request. I mean, just still right now today, I don't think he's the right dude, like in the head. And so it makes me think about, and it's kind of an off example, but it makes me think about King Nebuchadnezzar, who went off into the woods and was nipping grass until he came to himself. I don't think he's come to himself. And it's been many, many, many years ago.
Like 20, almost.
If I had to put a time on it, I know it's 16 because I met your uncle that same year. And I was like, I don't want to be with anybody. I just want to be free.
Just want to be free.
Right. He continued to call even after I was like, okay, I have a boyfriend. I think it was a while. And he continued to call. And Corky was like,
yeah, my uncle crazy. He not going. So at this point, you have now met my uncle, even though the man of not God is still calling you. And my uncle crazy, okay? He not going, okay? And he don't play about you.
Yeah.
So y'all are now married, have wonderful, beautiful children, and then you up and leave me, and y'all move.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this marriage has been much better.
Oh my goodness, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I love me some Corky Magee.
Yeah. But y'all up and move, and it seems to me like you like to marry spontaneous men. Because I think he just put in for a job transfer one day, and didn't he?
Well, so when I came, I told him this was a pit stop. I told Pastor and First Lady, this is a pit stop. I'm trying to move to Texas. So I'm from Texas, you know, so I was like, well, this is where I want to be. So basically, we went and we visited some friends. We come back, and he's like, babe, we moving to Texas. Because he had told me I was born in Mississippi and I'm going to die in Mississippi. He's like, I'll never live anywhere else. So the thought of moving to Texas was just poof, you know. So he requested a transfer, and when he got it, I was like, why are we moving to Texas? Like, whose idea was this?
So y'all just up and moved to Texas.
Yeah.
Lived there for a hot minute.
9 years.
Found a wonderful church.
Yes.
The church that my husband talked about in our podcast with that prophet. And there is where you start learning a little bit more about deliverance ministry.
Yeah.
Can you give us an...
Oh, wow. There's so many places I could go with that. We were at that ministry for 6 years up until our pastor passed away. Oh, that was such a devastating loss. He passed the same year Christian was born. But I can remember just so many instances of different things that would happen, manifestations, specifically directed towards me. I can remember when he, there was a specific young lady, I won't name her name. There was one particular, we had taken him to the youth conference, and she had a fantastic time. It seemed like there was breakthrough, like she had been kind of hitting up against a wall. And so there was a breakthrough. And so I noticed, actually, I don't even think you knew this, but like on the way back, the closer we got to home, the stranger she got, to the point of like closing her eyes and like talking and having conversations, looking in your general direction, talking to you, but not eyes not open. So whatever she had been dealing with that we didn't know she was dealing with at that time was manifesting. And so, we go back. There's a picnic on Saturday. We're at the picnic. Everything's great, but she's being very kind of weird, standoffish towards me. And Sunday, it's my daughters. It's their first time in church in Texas, and so literally they got to witness their first actual manifestation of a demon. The young lady, they were praying for her. I was kind of working the prayer line, catching or whatever. And she jumps up on a pew and scales two people, jumps onto me, pins me on the ground, and she's whispering sweet nothings like, I'm going to kill you in my ear. And they're like, get off of her, da 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 da. And if you know my goddaughter, you know she's a fighter.
Yeah.
And
To say the least.
yeah, and she was in shock, like stuck to her seat. My pastor looked at her, knowing he didn't know her, like, in the natural, but his spirit must have recognized something. He immediately looked over at her, and my daughter was looking at her, and they were trying to get this girl off of me, and they don't know that she's telling me she's going to kill me. They have no idea. And I mean, that was just the first. Like literally, I think we moved. We went to that church. I want to say 2 months before, and so they let us take the kids to the youth conference in Houston. And yeah, that was my first encounter.
Okay, did she ever get delivered?
So they told her to stay away from me, and she actually came to me and she's like, you can't even look at me. I'm like, well, because I told the pastor that I love God, but your words mean nothing. But if you try to hit me, we literally had like a little meeting where my husband's like, hey, this little girl is over here telling her, sweet nothings. And so, yeah, I can't, I want to say there was full deliverance, but it's almost like the house being swept and clean and coming back with 7 more.
Maybe you wouldn't have it one time to tell me.
7 more. So, yeah, that were worse. So, yeah, it when it came back with a vengeance, and we had no relationship because she just, even though I knew what it was, and I just, I was like, it's fine, you know, it is what it is, but the door was still open because they closed me out. They were like, telling her stay away from me, because they didn't know. I don't think everybody really realized what was happening, even though we knew it was deliverance ministry. But I don't think they really realized because they were just like, don't talk to her, stay away from her. And she like had to sneak and come apologize. She's like, I'm so sorry. Like, and I'm like, I know what's going on, you know.
Did they think you were the problem or they thought she was the problem?
Well, they knew she was a fighter too,
Okay.
but they didn't like they just didn't recognize it. That it was literally it's like knowing that someone in your family is bipolar, but never getting them the help. So they knew that there was something there, but it was almost like there was just, I can't say there's no effort to fix it because who knows what's going on behind the scenes. But literally, they were just like, stay away from her. Just stay away from her. And I'm like, well, it was a demon literally trying to attack me because this little girl who is very powerful, like, literally had a breakthrough. Literally. And that thing was acting up. And I'm like, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Yeah. And that was, again, the first of a few that were directed towards me. There was another situation where a young lady had a bat and brought it to church. I mean, yeah. Yeah, the short version, there was another young lady. She was my age. She wasn't a kid. And she was battling with some stuff. And so sometimes when jealousy gets the best of you because, we're helpers, we're worker bees. So when we come in, it doesn't matter if you need me to clean the bathroom, it doesn't matter if you need me to um, do whatever, I'm willing to do it. So they had us, doing different things in ministry, and jealousy kind of crept up on her. And so she started trying to do some of the same stuff I was doing. Sometimes we all have different jobs that we're supposed to be doing. But when you are not necessarily as mature spiritually, different things will jump on you. So I literally think that's what happened, where something attached itself to her, directed it towards me. She would sit in my choir rehearsal. We would be up on our feet singing. She would be sitting down. Um, then she would literally be trying to give people notes. And everybody's not vocally, apt. And so she would be trying to tell people what to do. I mean, just blatantly disrespectful, knocking my book out of my hand, bumping into me. And this went on for a while. And so something, I say one of the Holy Spirit's names is something. Something just told me that this particular day that my husband needed to be at rehearsal because he had been missing. So short version is, she came in, she sat down, she was doing all kind of stuff. He hadn't had a chance to see because he had been working. And so this particular day I was like, I need you here. Something is about to happen. I could just feel it. So he comes, we go through rehearsal. She's cutting up during rehearsal. She's got her feet up on the pulpit. The choir stand was behind the pulpit. She's got her feet up. And I was like, Lord, this ain't my house. This is your house. So she's doing all this stuff trying to disrespect me, but Lord, help. So apparently there were people who were seeing what she was doing, and they were reporting back. And so it was getting back to her, and she's like, you need to keep my name out of your mouth. And I'm like, I hadn't called anybody. But long story short, that particular day, I dismissed choir rehearsal. It was time to start praise team rehearsal because we had both. And so I'm praying everybody in, and she comes bursting through the door, and she's like, hey, you. And I literally think she's going to curse me out, because I don't know what she's going to say. She's like, you need to keep my name out of your mouth. And my husband stands up on his feet, and he's like, if you don't have anything nice to say to my wife, don't say anything at all. And she's like, and you, and I'm seeing this raging demon in her. And so I'm just like, she got something to say. Let her say what she has to say, because I knew she had been cutting up, knocking my book down, doing stuff. So we went to her, the scripture says, trying to figure out what was going on. Come to find out, she was offended by something my husband had said in a joke, jokingly, but she didn't say her feelings were hurt. So she was taking it out on me. And so we had went and tried to reconcile. So when this blew up, I'm like, I thought we had already talked. You said everything was good, but it's a demon. So it's not. It's a spirit. So literally, she was in an uproar. She threw her brother-in-law across the room. There were some kids that got up and stood in between us, trying to keep her away from me. And I'm like, I'm just looking at her. So again, my husband stands up. She walks on a pew and storms out of the door. And so when she, at the end of rehearsal, I had told some people, I just felt something was going to happen that day. I told him, I said, can you go outside and watch my, belongings? Because I'm like, something's telling me something's going to happen. So literally, my pastor never comes to rehearsal. He comes to rehearsal that day as she's going to her car to get a bag. I don't know if she's going to come bring the bag back in church to me or if she's going to smash my windows out of my car. But she's so enraged and angry at me. And so, after that whole incident, I told her sister, I'm like, hey, because she stopped coming to church. I'm like, she needs to come back to church. If she doesn't need to be anywhere, she needs to be here. So she made some kind of strange, it wasn't an apology, but it was real weird after the fact. But I think eventually she just left. So I don't know if there was real deliverance. You can try to do deliverance and work with people, but if they don't want it, then you open them up and then leave the opportunity for 7 more.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that?
Because how do you handle somebody trying to physically attack you? And then you told them to come back to church.
Come back to church, sis.
You, you might have a little more Jesus than me. Because I'm not finna tell you to come back if you is attacking me.
We wrestle not against flesh and blood. You need some prayer. You need some fasting. You need somebody to labor for you. And what I want to see is for you to be delivered. Like, please don't put your hands on me.
I need lessons because...
Like, but at the end of the day, like, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a labor for you at home by myself, and you don't have to be there.
There were people calling me, and they were like, sis, blah, 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 da, 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 da. And they were like, if it was a fight, you won. I said, I didn't win. I said, because she didn't win. I'm like, so we just need to keep praying for her. Like, this is not winning. You know, like, this isn't winning. We've won when she has her deliverance, when she is saved, when she is walking free. And so when I said weird apology, I mean, like, she came to me a couple months later and she was just like, when you tell us to get up during praise and worship and, you know, you say hug your neighbor, she's like, I don't hug my neighbor because my grandma told me not to hug my neighbor. And I'm like, okay.
That was her apology?
That was the first time she talked to me.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
And that was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sis.
So I was like, okay, yeah, you know. I think she was trying to find a way to make amends because we were actually cool before that. Like, she had grandchildren. I had bought her grandchildren some gifts. You know, well, the daughter was having a baby. Like, she had been in my house because I was telling my pastor, I was like, she knows where I live. You know, like, you know, she brought the bat up here. She knows where I live, you know. And he's like, oh. Like, yeah. Yeah, because we were cool. Like, she came to my house, hung out with my kids. So I didn't understand, like, other than it being a spirit.
Okay, listen. We out of time, but can I just say, I thought the girl was like 23, not 63. Okay.
Not 63, my age.
Okay. Oh, but she had grandchildren. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. We're out of time. Yes. Thank you.
It's layers to this. It's layers. It's like an onion.
There's so many layers. Yeah. So we're going to pray. Okay. And at this point, I don't even know who to pray for. I'm going to pray for the women who are struggling in their marriages because they don't want to get back in the dating pool.
God.
But God has specifically given them an out. And they know, like, God is releasing me from this. Yes. But I'm scared of that next step.
Yeah. And I would say definitely there's always tomorrow.
Always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. There, you know, I was talking and I was like, you know, everybody's like, you know, your marriage and you and your husband is so funny and I love y'all. And they don't know, you know, there was a before.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time before when there was craziness. I can remember him asking me, you know, because, you know, he was super saved. You know, he's like, can you marry? You know, because he didn't know the circumstance of my divorce. He just knew what the scripture said. And I was like, yeah, I can. Based on the scripture. Mm-hmm. But there's always tomorrow. Mm-hmm. There's life after death because divorce is death. Yeah. There's life after. So
praise God for that. Yeah. All right. Father, I just thank you so much for every person that is watching this that's struggling. They know that you've told them to take that next step. They know that you have released them. Maybe it's not just marriage, but Father, you've released them from whatever the area is. But they're afraid. They're scared of what it is that is going to require from them next. And so I am asking that you would be their peace in the middle of the storm, that you would strengthen them, give them a resilience, and help them to know that they are already made whole in you, even though it may hurt temporarily. I thank you that you will be their strength in this season. And it is in the mighty name of Jesus Christ that we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Mhm.